don't analyze every single decision, right? I think that's a problem I see a lot of SaaS businesses end up in. Is if you have to do that, you're never going to move forward, right?
Yeah, follow your guts.
Exactly. Follow your gut, see what happens. In many cases, you're right and you save yourself a lot of time.
Hey, Bootstrappers! Welcome to Bootstrap Stories, the podcast where founders, marketers, and thoughtful leaders share the most actionable tips on building a successful business. After meeting with hundreds of bootstrappers in the past years, I figured out that we all struggle to grow our businesses. But the truth is that most of us don't know where to ask for help or advice. That's why I decided to start this podcast, to give you all the keys to succeed at every stage of your business. All the tested strategies for solving your struggles and taking your business to a new level. No fluff, no bullshit, only a real talk between friends that help each other succeed.
Today, my guest for this episode is Esben Friis-Jensen, co-founder and chief growth officer at Userflow. Esben, thanks a lot for accepting my invite.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
I'm really curious to really dig into your journey as a bootstrapper. I know you built a company where you raised a lot of money and now you've started bootstrapping. So can you give a bit more context of how you started Userflow and where you're at right now in terms of numbers and team?
Yeah. So to give a bit of background, I'm originally I founded a company called Cobalt. So that's the company you spoke about in the past. Cobalt today is like an 8-year-old or 9-year-old actually company with 200 plus employees. And yeah, we went through the whole VC route, so raised seed, A, B, and they will probably do a C at some point. So been on that journey. But 8 years into Cobalt, I think that the company had kind of grown up, and I wanted to try something else. So wanted to go back to the startup roots. And my friend Sebastian, he had already started Userflow back then. Originally, he had actually started it as another company called Studio One, which did kind of video recordings instead of what we do today, which is a no-code tool for in-app onboarding. But we had talked about it over the years about me joining him as a co-founder. And then finally, in the beginning of 2021, I joined him. And he had been going with the new product, Userflow. He had been going with that since late 2019. So he already had a pretty good product, but what we needed to do now was basically to grow it, right? To really get a bigger customer base and get the product out there. The reason why I was so fascinated by Userflow is that it's basically a product that helps companies do in-app onboarding and become more product-led. So basically have product-led onboarding instead of having people onboarding. And in Cobalt, we had gone through a transition from sales-led to product-led, and that had really kind of intrigued me about the whole product-led growth world. So it was like an easy decision to join Sebastian and do a product that's actually in that space.
And that's really interesting. And so if I understood correctly, Sebastian started in 2019. Is a developer, correct? He's CTO.
He's a superstar developer. He's really, really good. He had done a startup before as well, and he used to work at Google. Okay. And so, he had worked a lot on this product. Nice. And built it out.
So when you joined, how big was the team? Was it just him and then you, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just me and Sebastian.
And I'm really curious also because when you join at this stage, so one person has been working for already 2 years. You obviously come with another skill set, a different skill set. How exactly, because in our audience, we have a lot of people, we have developers who started project and are looking for sometimes business co-founders and sometimes the other way around. So how exactly do you manage to decide how many shares each person's going to get when there is a late founder like this coming into the project?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on who you're bringing on. But in Cobalt, it was the same. Cobalt, you can say somebody got the idea for Cobalt, but we still got even amount of shares, right? Because we knew it was a shared project. And the same thing happened in Userflow. Sebastian knew the past was not super important. It was the future, and he knew the value that I could bring to the business to bring the growth in. So yeah, we divided equally. I do think there are many opinions on this, and what lawyers are gonna say is like somebody needs to own more than the other. But I actually think like a true partnership requires equal ownership, and then you just have to trust your co-founder a bit. But yeah, it depends a bit. I guess you can go in different paths, but that's the way I like it the most, like where you have equal partnership, so nobody kind of feel like they own more than the other.
Yeah, I agree that in the tough times, I think it's always easier, when everyone is on the same boat with the same shares. The only thing I was wondering is because it was a bit late, but at the time you joined, did Userflow had customers already, or like to what kind of like MRR was it? And right now, where are you at after like a year or so?
Yeah, so Sebastian had actually done a really good job on first of all, building a super great product, right? A product that customers liked, and he had done kind of what he had the capacity to do. So he had set up some ads, Google ads. He had, of course, reached out to his network. He had also done like a product hunt campaign to get some attention. And since the launch there in late 2019 and until when I joined, he had grown to have a lot of like very, like I would say smaller customers, right? Like these kind of smaller startup shops were using his product a lot. And he had, I think around 200K in ARR at that point.
Nice.
But yeah, but when I joined, he knew, I mean, it was general. He was looking to basically, how can we grow this business even further, right? And he knew that if he needed to have this divided focus himself, it's never going to grow as fast as you like, right? So what he was looking for was somebody who could scale the growth, basically, right? Knowing that he had built a great product, he wanted somebody to come in and help him take the growth to the next level. So in 2021, we grew by 6x in revenue, nice. And this year we are still growing 10% every month.
Wow, that's nice.
This is I want to note, this is with a team of just me and Sebastian and one person extra. So we're still only a very small team of 3 people.
That's super cash efficient. Congrats.
So yeah, we've done very well, I would say. Yeah, thanks.
No, that's super interesting. And the other person who joined in the team, what does that person do? Is it like a support or dev?
No, it's actually a designer. So I think that goes back to the whole product-led growth mindset that we use. So Userflow is a born product-led growth business. And we think product first in everything we do. So whatever problem we can solve in the product, instead of having to hire people to support more, we do that. So the third person is a designer who actually helps a lot on making sure the UX and things like that is top notch. So we don't get a lot of support questions related to like UX issues and stuff like that.
Really interesting. And I wanna dig in actually into this product-led growth as you've already built like a company with your 3 people. You're doing like millions in ARR in a very little time. So why would you say like user in onboarding is so important, and what are kind of like the mistakes that you see on other products when it comes to onboarding?
Yeah, so I would say, so first of all, product-led growth to me is first of all like a mindset, right? It's a mindset where everybody in your organization think product first. So that would mean that you are typically, the way you sell is that you have a very strong product focus on your website. You have a call to action that sign up for a free trial or freemium or whatever. So get people to try your product, right, before they buy, and have that as a key part of the buying journey. And onboarding then comes in a product-led business already comes in that free trial process, and it becomes about converting new customers, right? Like the better you can onboard customers to understand your product and understand the value of your product, and in a faster way, the more customers you can convert, basically. So in a product-led world, onboarding is really essential for conversion. But in any software as a service business, it's important for retention, right? Like the better you onboard your users, the more the higher retention you can get, right? You can get them to use more features and use more functionality. And if you do it in a product-led way, as you can do with Userflow, then you also save CAC, right? Customer acquisition cost and customer service cost by not having people do the onboarding, but actually having your product do the onboarding for you.
Nice. And for you, like, what has been kind of before we dive into like the mistakes of really bad onboarding and how we can improve, etc. I'm also curious to understand when it comes to your growth strategy, because you are like product-led growth. Obviously, you want people to try out your service, start their free trial, see like tons of value, and then convert. And then you have like very limited support because the product is very clear. Everything is kind of like automated, so it works perfectly. But how exactly do you, as a company, have been driving enough traffic to your website to convert people in that flow? Was it mainly ads? Did you do outreach, communities, Facebook groups? Like, what was kind of your strategy when you started?
Yeah, it's a mix of a lot of things, right? But I think, as mentioned in the beginning, what Sebastian did well was the product hunt campaign and then ads, right? And we've been able to build on so product hunt you can only do once, right? And that gives you a bit of a buzz. But then ads is still a very big source for us. We are in a very red ocean competitive space. People are searching for the problem of onboarding. So SEM works amazing for us. But what we added, and that was a big part of what I added to the equation, was thought leadership and SEO. So basically going in, how can we build more content? How can we bring more brand value to Userflow and stuff like that, which has also increased the signups. And then on top of that, we are also doing outbound, but I would say, and I always, I see a diminishing return sometimes on some of these channels, but I am doing outbound. We are doing email campaigns. We are doing LinkedIn campaigns. And I still think that's an important part of our go-to-market channel. But yeah, ads and SEO is a big part of it. And then the last bit is, of course, customer referrals, right? That goes back to having a great product. The better product you build, the customers will talk about it. They will refer other people to it, and so on. And one channel you can use to empower that even more is something like G2, where you can have like public reviews, right? So that's something we're doing as well.
Nice. That's really interesting. So when you have like all these eyeballs, people like coming to your website, what's like you would say the usually like typical mistakes people do whenever they have their onboarding on a SaaS product?
So I think the interesting, and we can start from the beginning, like what non-product-led businesses do as a mistake is they make it very hard to understand what the product is actually about. When you go to a non-product-led business website, it's often very fluffy marketing language that doesn't really give the user any indication of what this product is actually doing. It focuses too much on the why and not enough on the how. And that's a onboarding problem, because if you are sending a signal, if you're not clear in your messaging, it's harder for people to understand, and then they get disappointed when they see the actual product. So you end up having conversations with people who are not looking for that kind of product. They were looking for something completely different. So I think that's super important that you make it very clear and concise what problem you're solving, how you're solving it already on your landing page, and also in your outreach and in your ads and so on. So onboarding already starts before they actually access your product. Then for more sales-led businesses, what they do is they typically onboard customers after the sales process, right? So it's a very people-driven process, which is very expensive. And that's where product-led onboarding, where you allow customers to self-serve and onboard themselves, is a lot better. And that can really bring lower your CAC and service cost and bring a lot of value. When people are then doing this product-led onboarding, the issue I see there that people don't do is they make it too they don't do show, don't tell approach. They kind of focus a bit too much on describing each and every menu item in their UI. So it's like, this is what this does, next. This is what this does, next. This is what this does, next. That's not really a good way to do it. You should make it a lot more action-based and focused on driving towards these kind of aha moments. You want the user to discover what it can be used for, and they need to do it in an action-driven way. So get your user to do certain actions, have a checklist of actions you want the user to do, and have them do those actions and guide them through those actions. Don't do these very boring next tours that are just describing your product.
So I've got tons of questions flowing through my mind. I want us to try to go into actionable, really example. So you mentioned that what you want is for your users during the onboarding to kind of be walked through, specific actions toward the aha moments. So the moment where they really discover the full value of your product. So what would you advise people to do? Is it best, for example, to have steps that can be skipped? Or do you always force people to really, be able to do the action so they go to the next one? What's the best things you've seen? And can you also give maybe an example of one of our clients or someone who's doing it really well with kind of a use case so we understand better?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I don't think anybody should be forced into onboarding. Different users have different styles of learning, and some want to learn through a knowledge base, some want to explore on their own, and some are excited about getting an in-app onboarding, right? And you should allow different users to do different things depending on their learning style. But what you should do if you do this kind of in-app onboarding is really make sure it's interesting, as I said, right? It should be action driven. It should really drive towards a certain action or aha moment and something that makes sense for the end user. A way of tailoring onboarding more towards the specific user is to ask them, for instance, about their use case in the beginning, right? There are companies like Miro, they do this really well, where they ask about a use case and then they show templates based on that use case and tailor the onboarding accordingly. With Userflow, you can do that as well. You can build a survey question that asks about the use case, and then you can structure the onboarding depending on that answer.
Nice.
So that's something we do ourselves as well. We also ask, because we have maybe 3 or 4 different use cases. One is surveys, in-app announcements, or onboarding, and then they can select one of those, and then we tailor the onboarding accordingly. So I think that's a way to make the onboarding more fit for purpose, right? Is to ask the user, what are you looking for, right? And then drive towards those actions.
That's really cool. And I want to go back a little bit towards the haha moment, because it's something that's critical. How or what advice could you give, to a founder who maybe launched their software and are not sure yet what is the haha moment? Because in every product, you can do multiple things, but you don't always know, what is the aha moment for your users. So do you have tips that people could apply to kind of find that aha moment with their users?
Yeah. So first of all, there's not only one aha moment for your application. I think that's super important to note. There's always more than one aha moment. But there's typically key aha moments, right? for Userflow, what we realized it's that how easy it is to build the flows. That's the first thing our customers say, right? Or prospects say. And I think that's really what it's about, right? Like listen to your customers. What are they saying? Why are they liking your tool? And then emphasize on that. That's the aha moment, right? Like that's when they say something that is, this is why we like it, then that you can use as an input to what is the aha moment, right? So for us, it's for instance, how easy it is to build the flows. So what we did as the first step in our onboarding is we drive them towards building a flow, right? That's the very first step we do. We don't describe every setting or things like that in our UI. We just drive them towards build your first flow with Userflow, right? And I've seen other businesses do something similar, like Webflow will guide you how to build your first website from the beginning, right? So I think it's again about that, like identifying that key action or key thing you want the user to do to discover the value, right? And not look at onboarding as something where you need to describe every functionality in your app. It's really about focusing on the core and what it is the users like. And a great way to discover that is by asking your customers, right? And listening to your customers. Then as you mature, you can do more analytics, right? You can look at, okay, what does that actually mean? What are the different aha moments? How does that translate into conversion? So do more like data analytics. One thing we are doing at Userflow is we look at how out of data, we realize that the users who enjoy using Userflow or are likely to convert, they spend more than 30 minutes typically, and typically in the first sign up, they spend more than 30 minutes using Userflow.
Nice.
And of course, there also needs to be an ICP. So that's if it's like a student building a flow for fun, that's not a good customer, right? But if it's like a SaaS business, an actual person in a SaaS business building a flow for more than 30 minutes, that we consider an activated customer, or PQL, as it's famously called, right? Product qualified lead, somebody who are very likely to have discovered that kind of aha moment. In other businesses, others might have heard of like Slack. I think it's like if a team sent more than 2,000 messages, they considered it, okay, now they discovered that value of Slack. But the aha moment of Slack is really how easy it is to communicate. It's not that the other thing is just a metric to actually track whether that happened or not, right?
So it's actually really interesting because you mentioned, like how you're leveraging data to get insights on your product. So I'd love to know, like with such a small team, how did you implement it, like data directly into your product? What tool have you been using? And how do you select like what data is important versus the one that is not? Because, in the example you mentioned, it's something like super specific, like one user spending 30 minutes will be more likely to convert. So what type of data were you looking at, and also why?
Yeah, no, I think so. I agree. We have a small team, and I wouldn't say we have the best analytics setup in the world. We started out simple, right? So we started actually by using something. We used our own, in the beginning, just Userflow. We track our users in Userflow. So when you install Userflow in your app, you have a JavaScript snippet that runs and tracks your users. That's what we use to load the content, and we use Userflow on Userflow. So we were able to do some kind of tracking of users and how they engage with our onboarding. So that was number one. The second thing we did was actually to use a session recording tool. In our case, we use LogRocket, which I think that's a good start for businesses who don't have like sophisticated analytics set up yet, because it's much more tangible to look at session recordings, right? But it also gives you some additional data like time spent in a session and these kind of things. And it also gives you an actual idea of what people are doing, right? I think those tools are very good in the beginning because they are very tangible, easy to understand for everyone. And then over time, and we haven't really built that out completely yet, we're going to look into tools like mixed panel amplitude, these kind of tools, right, to do more sophisticated analytics. But for now, it hasn't been a big need. I think it's good to have that kind of, and I think many get lost in the analysis paralysis kind of world, right? Where we are more like taking it baby steps, do small iterations and learn from that, but don't analyze and overanalyze every single decision, right? I think that's a problem I see a lot of SaaS businesses end up in, is they think they need to analyze every single thing and have data backing it and so on. If you have to do that, you're never going to move forward, right? Sometimes you just have to have some kind of intuitive
follow your
sense
guts.
Exactly, follow your guts, see what happens. In many cases, you're right, and then you save yourself a lot of time by not doing a lot of analysis. So
yeah. I agree. I was actually checking like your website and your pricing. I see like the middle plan is around like $600, and then it's like a enterprise. So what's kind of like the process for sales, like your sales process and your sales funnel? Is it very like self-service and people are actually like purchasing $600 like self-serve, or do you have to like chat and convert?
I mean, we have to we have customers buying our pro plan without ever speaking with anybody. So yeah,
that's nice.
That happens. But yes, we are there. I think we do a couple of different things. So one, we have, of course, as I said, in-app onboarding with Userflow. We use Userflow and Userflow. We also do email onboarding. So we use Intercom and HubSpot to kind of interact via email to get trial users to come back to the platform. As you see on our website, our main call to action is sign up for free trial or view a demo. But we do also allow customers to request a demo and get a demo. It's not something we do a lot of because we're actually driving a lot towards the other call to actions. But what we then do is we are very available to support, right? So whenever somebody has a question on our chat or something, we are available as human beings. And I think that's something you should never forget about, even if you are super product-led, is that you don't want to be a robot, right? You want to, in the cases where somebody want to actually ask questions to a human being, you should be there. You should make all the different things available, like documentation and all this stuff, to make it more effective. You should make your product have the best UX so you avoid certain questions. But in the more kind of complex cases and somebody asks questions, you should be there as a human. Because I don't know about you, but I really I think the industry that does it the worst way is like travel industry or something like that. When you call them and it's impossible to reach somebody who actually can help you with your question, right? And if it was the basic things I wanted to get sorted, I would have sorted it myself on the website. But now I'm calling in or I'm chatting because I have a more complex issue, right? So you don't want to diminish that. So I think that's super important. So we are also available on the chat and email, and are answering questions and bringing the decisions over the finish line by supporting our customers.
No, that's really cool. I think for a travel industry, like the issue you face whenever you're doing like B2C things is just the volume, and you have people like. We see that also, like, I mean, we have also live chat and we have a support team answering like 24/7, all time zone, etc. But what we see is sometimes, you would have this type of customers that is just here for a chat, like they're not even here to ask questions. So sometimes I understand like this, these companies, they must struggle.
I agree. I think B2C is definitely harder. I think in B2B, this shouldn't be a problem, right? To have, you can say we can do it with a team of 3. You just have to think about like, how do I solve support issues? You should never solve support issues by hiring more support people. You should always look at what is the root cause of the support question.
How do I change the product?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And you were mentioning something, regarding when the user has been onboarded, you are going to send like a series of email in order to try like to make them come back to the product. So what type of emails do you send out like in order to get like those users to come back? Like have you seen some emails performing much better than others? What do you focus on? How do you phrase it?
we focus a lot on informing the customer, right? To bring value to the customer. Don't just follow up, but bring value to the customer. So in our initial kind of trial emails, it's a lot about like this kind of documentation is available. Did you know that, right? Like look at these like baseline documentation, be proactive around that. It's also in one of the last steps in that sequence, we are like proactively asking if they want to speak with somebody, right? Like maybe now they've gone through all the trial, but they're still like in doubts about something. Do you want to speak with a real person, right? We offer that possibility. So that works very well. What we have added on top is actually something we were inspired by Superhuman, the email provider, where the CEO does these like regular emails where they basically give tips, right? So we have like monthly or weekly, bi-weekly tips from Userflow. So kind of proactively writing an email saying, did you know you could do this with Userflow, right? Like, and those are working very well. We use them for existing customers as well. So it's like a recurring thing that hits both existing customers, but also prospects. And it's a great way to both bring people back, but also retain people as they learn about new use cases and stuff like that.
No, that's really cool. And like I want to go back a little bit, with the aha moment, because I think like in your product, what's gonna be key is to make understand people that with Userflow, they can like help their users find that aha moment. So I'm assuming that you have like a really good expertise, around that. Do you feel like you have found kind of like a perfect way, apart from really like talking to your customers and trying to understand, what's the best benefit from them? Like, do you have like some sort of like process in place or something you advise your customers to follow when it comes to, I'm going to help you with the onboarding, figure out, like what's the aha moment of your users?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a lot of knowledge about that, right? I wouldn't say it's something it's not something we like present to the user and help the user find their aha moment in the app. Okay. But it's something I've done a sequence of video series and knowledge content on how do you define the aha moment, how do you discover the aha moment, right? So it's something we're definitely focused on that our customers need to do. It's one of those things I wish I want to do better, right? Because one thing is we give this tool to customers to build something, right? And they have a lot of flexibility with Userflow. They can build whatever, and they can also build these boring next tours, right? So one future dream I have about Userflow is that we add more guidance actually when somebody is doing something that's not going to bring value, right? Like because they are, basically, if you let's say they start building a boring next tour, it could actually be interesting to do something where it says these tours that you're currently building performs lower than the average, right? Like if you can do kind of recommendation engine like that could be really interesting. It's something I think we're going to look into in the future, right? Because it can be a self-serve way to give improvement guidance, right? Like if we see somebody building something that we know from a data perspective are going to perform bad, then we might be able to trigger some alert about that early on, right? And help our customers build the right things with Userflow.
Nice, really interesting. I think we've went through like a lot of really cool insights on the onboarding, on how to find your aha moments, how to kind of like build the best flow possible, for users and drive product-led growth. Now, like I want to go back a little bit in time, because now you have these two experiences of working and running, like a VC-backed startup, and now being like bootstrap with very small team. What were like the pros and cons of the one versus the other, and where do you want to go next? Like, I'm super curious.
I think, yeah, no. So when we started Cobalt, none of me or my co-founders never had done any startup, right? So we didn't know anything. So I think for us, it was maybe the right journey to go on that VC route where we had like a more structured. It was like we went through an accelerator program, we raised some capital. It was very like by the book kind of startup journey, right? And I think we learned a lot from that. And it would, I don't think we even, when you're doing your first startup, it's kind of like everything is new, right? So you just follow what everybody else is doing. And it was amazing to be able to raise money and go from there, right? But now that I've built a successful company with Cobalt, I think for me, the choice was obvious to not go that route again, because I think even though it's great and we ended up building a great business, it's very much a business that you can only go one route, right? And that's towards going public or, having a huge exit, right? And that means you have to keep hiring a lot of people. You end up focusing a lot on the organization instead of focusing on the product. The organization becomes the main part to focus on. If you hear all advice in that world, it's always like, it's about, as a manager, it's about building a team. As a leader, it's about building a team, running the team. And you kind of forget about the product, which I actually think is kind of sad, that the product diminishes in importance as a company grows. And that is what I like about being a bootstrap company. Is like we're super product focused, and we can get by with a small quality team. We don't need to spend a lot of time on coordination and stuff like that. Not a lot of meetings and all this stuff to discuss everything, right? And I think that is what I enjoy, right? Like fast decisions, fast iterations, very product focused. But it's a luxury I can have because I've done another company in the past, right? So I wouldn't advise anybody against raising money. I just want to be an advocate for the alternative, which is to bootstrap and build a different kind of business, right? If you're not looking to necessarily go public and that's the only route for you, then maybe VC funding is not right? Because that's really the VC route. That's what they're looking for, is that big exit.
So tomorrow, if investors come to see you and say like, hey, I'm writing you like a big check, the answer is no?
Yeah, for sure. We've already had that.
Yeah, I'm guessing you received like a lot of emails.
But yeah, no, yes, we are customer funded, right? And we enjoy that.
At the best routes, yeah. Nice, really interesting. I want to be also like cautious of your time, and in the wrap up, I usually ask 3 questions. First one being, what's your favorite book or podcast that you would recommend to another bootstrap entrepreneur?
So I think a great book to recommend to anybody looking into product-led growth is the Product-Led Growth book by Wes Bush. I recommend everybody to read that. There's also another book he wrote together with Ramsey John about product-led onboarding, particularly. So those books are really, really good if you're looking to get into the whole product-led growth world. So that's something I definitely recommend.
Great. Favorite bootstrap founder and why?
Oh man, that's a great question.
Tough one.
My co-founder Sebastian is a great bootstrap founder, but no, I'm a fan of a lot of business. I think the AHA journey I'm really inspired about, right? Them reaching 100 million in ARR with a fully bootstrapped business. I think they're very similar to Userflow in the sense that they had also done companies before, so it was not their first rodeo. So they have a lot of similarities, but I'm really impressed with what they've done anyway, and been able to bootstrap 100 million ARR business is amazing. And then of course you guys is also a great example. But yeah, lots of great businesses, and hopefully we'll see more in the future, right? Mailchimp was another huge one.
Mailchimp is crazy.
And that's a huge inspiration for bootstrap businesses as well.
Definitely. And final question: favorite things to do to regain energy during tough times?
Go hiking in the nature. That's one of the main reasons why I really love living in the US. It's like a hiking paradise. So much great nature. Over the last 2 years of COVID, I've been traveling around the US, Utah, Colorado, all these amazing places. And yeah, love doing that. It's a fantastic way to re-energize and get new perspectives.
Really cool. Well, Esben, it was really like a pleasure having you on the show. Tons of value bomb. Where can our listeners reach out to you or learn more about what you do?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Esben Friis-Jensen, and I'm also on Twitter, EsbenFJ. And then you can, of course, go to userflow.com. And we are actually also just launched a product-led community called product-led-stack.com. So also recommend checking that out. But yeah.
Awesome.
Always happy to connect and speak about product-led growth.
That's super. Thanks a lot, Esben, and have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. You too. Have fun.
Thank you for listening to the Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where Bootstrap entrepreneurs share their journey in all transparency. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to leave us a review. And in case you want to see the interview, all episodes are live on the YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day and make sure to also join us in our amazing Bootstrap community where we all helped each other to become successful and grow a profitable business. Take care and talk to you soon.